And let's now shift our focus to the United States. Since the presidency of Barack Obama, we have heard about America's Pacific pivot. How the US will shift from West Asia to the Indo-Pacific, but turns out that's easier said than done. Joe Biden was vice president when the pivot was declared, and now as president, he's hoping to take it further. Today, he's hosting the first ever summit between the US and Pacific Island leaders. First, some background. The Pacific is the largest ocean in the world. It covers nearly 1/3 of Earth. And within this region, there are 16 island nations. They are key in the looming conflict between the US and China. Since World War II, the Pacific has been dominated by the United States, sort of like an American lake. US policymakers never got directly involved with the Pacific states. They outsourced that work to their ally, Australia. But now, the situation has changed. China is eyeing strategic influence in the Pacific Ocean. They are saddling island nations with loans. They are also seeking military agreements with their governments. So now the US has woken up to this challenge. Biden is employing 3 strategies to that effect. Number 1, military assertion. America's most advanced warship is sailing in East Asia right now. It is called the USS Zumwalt. Last week, it was in Guam, and now it has arrived in Japan. The Zumwalt was commissioned in 2016. At that time, it was the US Navy's most expensive destroyer. The total cost? Almost $4.4 billion. The presence of this ship is a direct challenge to China, especially at a time which brings us now to strategy number 2, the diplomatic offensive. Vice President Kamala Harris is touring East Asia, of course. She was in Tokyo for Shinzo Abe's funeral. She held talks with the prime ministers of Japan, South Korea and Australia, basically the big 3 allies, as they're known as. The vice president also spoke to sailors aboard the USS Howard. The naval destroyer is currently docked at the Yokosuka area near Tokyo. Harris called out Chinese aggression in the region. Listen in.
China is undermining key elements of the international rules-based order. China has challenged the freedom of the seas. China has flexed its military and economic might to coerce and intimidate its neighbors. And we have witnessed disturbing behavior in the East China Sea and in the South China Sea. And most recently, provocations across the Taiwan Strait.
Finally, coming to strategy number 3, the Pacific Plan. Biden is hosting leaders of the Pacific Islands at the White House. There will be talks on climate change and security, perhaps a family photo at the White House, a dinner hosted by the president, basically a charm offensive. But the question is, will all this be enough? Well, that depends on what the US is asking for. The Pacific Islands find themselves currently in a rather strange political position. For most of the world, they are geopolitical pawns, chess pieces in the conflict between China and America. But domestically, that's not the biggest issue. The Pacific Islands faced an existential threat from climate change. Let me explain. They don't need military bases for that. They need climate funding. They need resilient infrastructure. And that's what these island nations are looking for, a robust partnership, not a strategic or military alliance. We have already seen indications of that. Do you remember China's security proposal to the Pacific leaders this year? It was a pretty detailed plan. It included economic assistance, cultural exchange, even security arrangements. But Pacific leaders soundly rejected that proposal. Looks like they are doing the same to America. Reports claim the Pacific Islands have rejected a draft proposal from Washington. It is said to have 11 points. It is also believed to be much broader than the Chinese proposal. And yet, the island nations are opposed to it. But why is that? Again, because of insufficient commitments. Let me now quote from a letter written by some Pacific envoys to US officials. The current proposed assistance is inconsistent with the contributions of our islands towards the security and stability of the region. The US proposed economic assistance seems predetermined and based on insufficient analysis. Decoding this for you, there is clearly a larger message here to both China and the US. This isn't a repeat of the 20th century Cold War. These islands are not interested in camp politics. They are interested in their own domestic concerns, namely climate change and infrastructure. And to achieve those goals, they will play the US and China against each other, sort of like getting the best of both worlds. Having said that, all is not lost for Joe Biden yet. If he wants to truly build an alliance, he must think bigger. He must go beyond the security and strategy prism of this relationship. He must offer meaningful investment and alternatives to China. That's a big hook. Plus, there must be focus on other Indo-Pacific partners. Remember, this isn't just China versus America. There are other powers on the scene. India is one. The ASEAN states are another. So if the US tries to build a multilateral Pacific order against China, they could possibly have more success. But if the idea is to simply expand American dominance, then these islands will definitely push back. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.